Is it recording? Yeah. Okay. So this is kind of a test to see how it looks. Hopefully it'll turn out right. We do this. Hey everybody, thanks for tuning in to the Stuff I Heard podcast. I'm your host, Josh Peak. I'm just getting set up here. New little camera setup. Here we go. Hello, and how's everybody doing? Today happens to be Saturday, the 16th of November, 2019. Excuse me. Goodness gracious. I am so sorry. I did not mean to do that on the podcast. Oh, that was rough. Must have had a hairball or something. Anyway, today is episode 160. 160. Wow. That's a lot. If you guys are watching this on the YouTube and you're looking at the video and you see these weird white spots behind me, I've been busy this morning. My wife is out of town, so that means that I get to do projects that normally make her crazy. So, honey, if you're listening to this, you've already seen what I've done, so I love you. I wanted to get in here and do some rearranging for the podcast. Now, what I mean by that is the wall behind me used to have a bunch of pictures on it, and we've taken the pictures down, and I've been looking at these little holes, and I'm thinking, I gotta fill these holes eventually. So today's the eventually. Okay, that's part of it. The other part of it was I have a television in this room that sits on my wall. At one time, this was the kid's bedroom, and then the kid moved out, and then it became a workout room, and I put a TV way up high on the wall so that when you're on the treadmill or the elliptical machine, it's at an angle, and you can look up at it, and while you're working out, you just, oh, look there. I'm watching the race, I'm watching the football, I'm watching the show on blah, blah, blah. Whatever the thing was, it could distract you from the fact that you're working out, and it, you tend to, when you're not paying attention, you can work out longer. I guess that's kind of the theory. So when we decided to convert this room over, I purchased a articulating arm, one of those things that plugs into the wall. You find a stud, you bolt it to the stud, and then it has the little arm that swings out. So I bought one, and I thought, well, that would work good in here, because then I could move that TV and have it, fish out towards us, and we could see what's on TV and not have it, facing the other way. And when I had the old setup in here, I'll be honest, I was sitting here at the desk, and I'm thinking, oh, this is a pretty cool setup, man. I get to do my podcast in here, blah, blah, blah. And I kept looking at the TV, and it had a glare from the window. Now, I like the window. I like the light that comes from the window. I actually prefer the light that comes from the window more than I do the lights in the ceiling fan above me. But the problem is I don't need the glare to hit me in the eye while I'm trying to record a podcast. Also, if I wanted to watch anything, I got nothing but glare from the screen. So I was like, I really want to figure out how to get this thing to move, but to do that, I got to take the old stuff down. And if I take the old stuff down, then I got to move some of these pictures. And if I move some of these pictures, I got to fill in some of the holes in the wall. And if I fill in some of the holes in the wall, and I got to take that other hardware off the wall, I know there's going to be big holes behind it. I got a whole lot of holes to fill. A whole lot of shaking going on. So that's what I did. I did all of that. I took the old brackets down. I moved the pictures. I filled the holes. I have not sanded anything yet because I wanted this stuff to sit and dry really well. It's a cold day outside, and I mean, granted, it's heated in here, but I want it to sit long enough that it can harden on the inside before I go sanding on it, because I don't want to remove everything. I just want to remove the outer edges, if you will. I have thought about painting this wall behind me, and I thought visually, if you guys are looking at me, it sort of has a yellowish hue to it, partly because of the light and also partly because of the wall itself. I mean, the wall sort of has a yellowish color, and I'm not a big fan of that. I know you probably don't care. This is just one of those aesthetic things that I'm thinking about. I'm trying to tap into my inner Whitney Cummings. I'm trying to tap into that inner producer, that inner director, that inner, making crap happen, and the aesthetic, the look, the feel, trying to make it all come together. so that you guys, when you tune in, you're like, oh wow, I really like what you did there. That's really awesome. Of course, all of this is made up in my head, and I'm sure you guys don't care. So anyway, beyond that, let's talk about stuff I heard. Okay, that is the name of the podcast, Stuff I Heard. I heard that there is a Christmas show going on in Charlotte, North Carolina right now at the convention center. My wife and her friends and her sister are all there. So if you're there and you see this cute little bunch of ladies running around, wave at them and say, hey! Not that you'll notice which ones they are, but anywho, they're there doing some Christmas shopping and having a good time, having a girls' day, girls' weekend, or whatever you say. And so with that going on, I kind of have free reign to kind of do whatever. What I was gonna do today, that didn't happen, obviously. I was gonna hang out with a guy that I went to high school with named John Floyd. John has served in the Army for the last, I may be butchering this, the last 23 years. He's retired, and now he basically is just enjoying being a dad, being a father, being a husband. And he also has like a little farm that he runs, and got some property. He and I spoke earlier this week, and he was like, hey, let's get together and do whatever. And I was like, okay, cool. I told him my wife was going to be out of town. He's like, why don't you come over here and hang out? And I was like, all right, cool. So I was going to come over there and hang out. And he's like, I got property on the backside with target range. Man, we can go out there and shoot guns. I'm like, I like guns. I like shooting guns. He's like, cool, man. I'll pack some rounds. And I'm like, you pack your own rounds? He's like, yeah. I'm like, cool. So part of me, has that kindred spirit of, all right, I get to do cool man shit, But part of me is also like, this is kind of neat. This is a guy that I enjoyed talking to when I was younger, and this is, we spent all this time away from each other, and even though I feel like I know John, I don't really know John, and I'm looking forward to getting to know John again, if that makes any sense. We had a weird thing growing up where we were familiar. We rode the school bus together. We had some classes together. We talked a little bit. We hung out a little bit, but not like you would say that friends do. I had his phone number. I think we tried to hang out a couple times when we were younger, and it just never came to fruition. But years later, now's our chance. It's never too late to make friends. That's all I'm trying to say to you guys. I've talked before about the fact that as you get older, it's harder to make friends. I think I heard that on a podcast. Matter of fact, Bert was trying to talk about as you get older. It's really difficult to make guy friends as guys. Like females seem to make friends with no problem. They just cultivate friendships right and left. But guys, he's like, let's be honest. He said it's easier to meet a stranger and have sex with them, which is an incredibly intimate thing. But it's easier to do that than it is to make a friend. And he's right. Not that I would know what it's like to meet a stranger and have sex with them. I've been married for 14 and a half years. But you get my point. When I was single, that was a reality. It was easier for me to meet somebody and say, hey, than it was to make a friend. Here's the weird thing. Like, I could live next door to somebody who, let's just say, likes to watch college football and also likes to grill out. And he also, enjoys watching a similar team. And I'm out back and I'm grilling, and I see him out back and he's grilling. I'm like, hey! He's like, hey! And then we go back inside in our own houses and we watch college football in our own houses, and we grill and eat our own food. Because that's kind of how we're designed to do it. That's kind of how we figured out life so far. But to make that bridge across and go, hey, I'm going to make an effort to spend time with you, that's a commitment, man. That's something else. See, even me doing all this crap in here today, I could have. I didn't hang out with John. I'm all over the place here. I didn't hang out with John today because he's sick. I sent him a message last night. I said, hey, are we still on? And he's like, I can't. I'm sick, and I'd really rather you not get it because it's pretty awful. And I was like, oh, good. Okay, thanks. I'll let us stay away. But there's other people that I could have reached out to today and said, hey, let's hang out. I didn't do that. Instead, I had this internal house project that I wanted to get done. I didn't have to do that today. I didn't have to do any of that. But I'm working on it. And I chose not to go hang out with people. It's kind of weird. I mean, you know, it's difficult sometimes for us to get out of our own comfort zones. It's difficult for us to, you know, call up somebody and intentionally say, hey, let's hang out. Let's go eat some dinner. Let's go whatever. Because I don't know what other people have going on. And when you talk to them, a lot of times they have something else going on and they don't want to hang out with you because they got their own plans or they got their own little crap. And especially a day like today when it's cold and rainy. Ugh. I mean, it's not like you just want to go hang out somewhere, and you got to like brave the elements if you're going to go out today. You know, you got to make some kind of commitment, some kind of trek, if you will. If it wasn't raining, I would probably spend the rest of the day messing around with some cedar wood. But I'm not going to do that if it's raining. I don't want to do it in the garage and make more and more of a mess. Not when I can do it outside and keep the mess somewhat quarantined out there. But anyway, I digress. Let's talk about stuff I heard. I heard a lot this past week. I had the ability to listen to a few podcasts from Mr. Joe Rogan. You guys know who I'm talking about. Oh, the old Joe Rogan experience, yeah. So I listened to several. I listened to episode 1378 with Greg Fitzsimmons. Greg and Joe are from the Boston area, New York, Boston area. They play pool together coming up. They came up in comedy around the same time. And so they're really good friends. They're really old friends. Greg Fitzsimmons used to have a podcast and radio show called Fitz Dog Radio, but now he does one with Allison Rosen called Childish. I haven't heard it. I know Allison Rosen because she used to do Adam Carolla's podcast. She was like his co-host, if you will. And at a certain point, they had a falling out. I'm not exactly sure what happened. You got to go back and do your own research if you want to figure out why they had a falling out. She then came up with her own podcast called Allison Rosen is Your New Best Friend. I don't know if she still does it. Again, I didn't do that kind of research. This is just, I'm telling you, I know who she is. She's done Bert's podcast. She apparently had stickers made, and when she went to go do Bert's podcast, like she got a couple of stickers, and the girls asked for stickers. So Georgia and Isla have stickers that say Allison Rosen is your new best friend, and it's their podcast. I used to listen to it, but listen, there's a certain wavelength or frequency that people talk about things, and you either are on board or you're not on board. What I mean by that is I liked Allison as a guest, but I didn't like Allison hosting her own stuff. The way her brain works is a little scattered and a little too flighty, I guess is the word. There's a whole lot of excuses that I would hear her say about why she didn't do this or why she didn't do that, and it all stemmed down to laziness. And I'm not a fan of lazy. I am not. If you guys have listened to me at all, you know, just in this podcast, that I have a hard time just sitting still. I have a hard time relating to people who don't do things. Holy cow. You guys hear that? Just decided it wanted to rain harder. Well, there we go. Rain harder. Go ahead. So anyway, I just couldn't get into Allison Rosen. For whatever reason. But now Fitzsimmons is a great comedian, and he's entertaining to listen to. And him hanging out with Joe is entertaining because they can talk about anything. They talk about boxing, they talk about coming up in comedy, they talk about, you name it, everything. And, you know, Greg Fitzsimmons apparently has been sober, I think he said for 6 years, 13 years, I don't know, for a while, years. He talks about, you know, when he was younger, he had a real bad drinking problem and a real bad anger management problem. And he's still trying to get over his anger management stuff. It's a good podcast to listen to. It's entertaining. Check it out. Then episode 1381, I skipped around a little bit. Donnell Rawlings. Donnell Rawlings the first time I watched Donnell Rawlings was on Bert's cooking show, the Something's Burning. He was on there with Red Grant, and Donnell took over the show. I mean, I don't know, it appears to be just his personality. He likes to talk, he likes to be the guy who's getting the center of attention, and he's got a great speaking voice. Like he's the kind of guy that when you hear him talking, you can tell that like he's entertaining. He's one of those people that if he's in a group, you're going to instantly just stand in front of him and listen for a while, because you're going to be like, oh, this guy's got a lot to say. And he does a 3-hour podcast with Joe Rogan. And in it, Joe talks him into doing a podcast. Apparently Joe's been telling him for a while, hey, you should have your own podcast. So Donnell said that he gave it a shot, and he actually recorded 44 minutes on his own. He said, I did it. I recorded my first one. He said, I just don't know how to put it out there. So apparently he's going to work with young Jamie Vernon, and they're going to help put it on. So it's going to be called The Donnell Rawlings Show. I don't know if it's out yet, but they were talking about it on the podcast. And then after the 3-hour conversation, where I learned that he was also in the Navy, I didn't know that Donnell was in the Navy. He doesn't look like the type that would be in the Navy. The partying kind of guy, comedian, loud, boisterous. I don't know. It's just hard to picture him in a uniform following directions. He was on the Chappelle Show. He was a writer on the Chappelle Show. He was in the HBO series The Wire. If you see him or hear him, you're gonna be like, oh yeah, I've heard that guy, or I've seen that guy. He is a stand-up comic. He goes on the road with Dave Chappelle a good bit because they're really good friends. And if you've seen Dave anywhere, like, I'm really jealous, first off. But also, you've probably seen Donnell opening up for him. So, you know how sometimes you look at your podcast list and there's like multiple that come out from a person? I noticed that, and like in the list of them, there was something, it said RZA, capital RZA, and Donnell Rawlings. And I was like, what happened? Did Donnell just stick around, or were they talking on the, because when you first see it, you think, okay, maybe he came back with somebody. Maybe that was the case. Or maybe Joe had another guest later and Donnell just hung around because he was like, oh, I didn't know you were going to hang out with him. Cool, let's. Turns out this RZA guy, RZA, is one of he is the leader, the founder of the Wu-Tang Clan. Now, when I was a kid, I didn't know anything about Wu-Tang. I just heard Wu-Tang stuff on MTV, and I was just like, whoa. All of these guys were like their own independent rappers and performers. And then they created this super group where they were all in there together and they all collaborated. And it was impressive. They were all heavily influenced by Asian culture and by, old samurai movies and stuff like that. And they had elements of, kung fu stuff in their videos. And I just dug it. Everything about it was cool. And it seems like they just kind of went away after a while. I used to hear a lot about Wu-Tang, and then all of a sudden they just kind of disappeared. And listen, I'd be lying if I told you I knew everybody who was in Wu-Tang. I don't. I know several rappers that are in it, but I don't know all of the members. There's a lot of members. And anyway, this podcast with Joe and Donnell, they sit around and they talk about the history of Wu-Tang and how he decided to develop this group and what he had to do to make it happen and how they all collaborated together. And this guy's very intelligent. He has a lot of information. He is well-read, has a good history. It's a fascinating podcast. It really is. If you know who Wu-Tang is, or even if you don't, this is an interesting podcast to listen to. If you're my mom and you don't like cussing, then obviously don't listen to this. But everybody else, you're going to really enjoy it. So check it out. RZA and Donnell Rawlings, episode 1382, Joe Rogan Experience. Wu-Tang! Episode 1383 is with Malcolm Gladwell. Now, I've heard Joe talk a lot about Malcolm Gladwell. He's one of those guys that he is I guess he's a writer and a historian and a whatever. He has a podcast called Revisionist History. I don't know why my voice isn't working today. I can't seem to say the words I want to say. Revisionist History. He has a new book called Talking to Strangers, What We Should Know About the People We Don't Know. And this is an interesting podcast. I listened to this one, and they talk about a lot of different things. They talk about how, there was a case where a police officer pulled a lady over. There was a confrontation about her smoking, and apparently he was a bad cop. He was just overzealous, and he describes the whole sequence of events that led up to him arresting her for basically not turning on her blinker, and held her in a jail cell for 3 days, and she committed suicide in the jail cell. And he talks about all of the ways that this went wrong and all of the ways it could have gone differently. And they talk a lot about how people just need to be kinder to each other, and how they need to learn to listen to each other and pay more attention to each other. And he's not wrong. Like, this is a very well thought out guy. This is a very smart guy. And he likes to take the angles of every approach that we don't normally pay attention to. So, listen, check it out. Malcolm Gladwell, really smart guy, really cool interview. Joe asks a lot of really good questions in this. This is one my mom would listen to because there's not as much cursing. I don't know why my mom suddenly has a thing with cursing. The older she gets, she's like, I just don't like all the cursing. I'm like, who is this woman? I know you. I grew up with you. This is not the woman that I grew up with. I mean, granted, you don't do it as much as you used to, but there was a time. Listen, you ain't fooling me. I know the lady. I know who you are. Of course, I also had a problem with cursing when I came out of the Marine Corps, and it took me a long time to get out of it. Let's just say I had a problem, and I'm still working on it. I'm trying to cut down. I made a decision at a certain point that I needed to curtail it, and so it's been a constant struggle that I work with. It's funny, the words that you make with your face that convey a message, and how sometimes those messages can be misconstrued. And sometimes you just lack the vocabulary to say the things that you want to say. That's a reality. Let's talk for a second. Let me talk. You guys aren't talking. You're probably talking to me right now out loud going, dude, just come on with it. Okay. Mandalorian. The second episode is already out. Booyah! The second episode, spoiler alert, has a little tiny baby Yoda. Obviously, it's not Yoda, because the whole thing is set up supposedly in the future, after the Empire's fallen. So, up to now, we haven't seen a Jedi, okay? We've only seen the Mandalorian, we've seen him collect bounties, we've seen him get a job, multiple jobs, complete jobs, come into conflict, overcome the odds. If you're watching this, I'm not going to spoil anything other than just saying it's getting better. Like, the first episode was good, the second episode is better. More character development, more learning about the characters. There's a little dude that is hanging around, and he has a way of saying that he's not going to repeat himself. He keeps saying, I have spoken. Because he'll tell the dude something, and he's like, what? And he goes, I have spoken. Which means, I'm done with this conversation. This is it. It's kind of funny. Anyway. You're introduced to a little character who is so freaking adorable. Oh my goodness. I know how they're going to make all their money from selling little tiny dolls of this baby Yoda looking thing. It's not Yoda, but it looks like Yoda. Like if you were to make Yoda really cute and like a tiny infant, that's what this is. And it's so darn cute. I just want to squeeze its little face and hug it. I imagine that it smells like peaches. None of that's real. I'm just I'm just saying. So Mandalorian episode 2 is out. I was thinking that was going to be like once a week, but maybe it's 2 episodes a week. I don't know. I was really dreading the fact that I had to wait a whole week for another episode. I was like, oh, come on. And then it popped up yesterday. I was like, yes. So thank you, Disney. My wife also got me to watch this series on there. If you look at the interface on the Disney Plus, it has a header at the top that advertises things, and then you have categories. You got like Disney, Pixar, Star Wars, Marvel, Nat Geo. Okay. Under the Disney one, if you click on it, it gives a whole bunch of stuff that's on the Disney platform. There's a lot of behind the scenes content and a lot of stuff about the creators of Disney World, Disneyland, Walt Disney, all of that stuff. And there's a show on there called, I wrote it down, what's it called? The Imagineering Story. Now, my wife watched this one night after I'd gone to bed, and she wrote about it on Facebook, and she was like, oh my God, it's so good. It was amazing to see all of those people, and I cried at the end, and I was like, cried at the end? What? You don't cry. She doesn't cry. Unless she gets hurt. But I went to watch it Thursday night, and there's a lot of good information in there. There's a lot of cool behind the scenes stuff about how they built Disneyland. And I think this is going to be a series because the second episode popped up today. I went to look at it because I apparently fell asleep during the last 20 minutes. Listen, it's not the show's fault. It's my fault because I've been up since 3 a.m. But I went to watch it the other night and I fell asleep, like I said, during the last 20 minutes. So I watched the rest of it today before I recorded this, and now I know why she cried. Spoiler alert, Walt Disney passed away. But they talk about it. They talk about the fact that he, developed Disneyland, was developing Disney World and Epcot, and passed away. And at the end, there's a loving kind of tribute about how it all happened and the timeline and what everyone's experience was, and it was sad. So anyway, it's a really good show. I'm digging it. I have gone on their platform and I've watched multiple Pixar shorts. On the Pixar thing, there's lots of shorts. Some of them were aired like before you'd watch a Pixar movie. If you guys have ever been to the movies to see a Toy Story or Cars, or was it Cars? Yeah, Cars was Pixar too, wasn't it? Yeah. Yeah, any of that stuff. The Incredibles, I'm drawing a blank, Nemo, any of that stuff. They always had like a little short movie in the beginning, little tiny, sometimes it was like 2 minutes, sometimes it was like 5 minutes, but it was a little short movie, animated. And these are all on there now, even some that they haven't released. There's little tiny shorts on there now, and they're cute. And I watched a whole bunch of them. I was like, oh, this is great. I don't think I watched all of them, but I watched a bunch of them. I've also, every night this week, have watched one of the Star Wars movies. I went back and started up A New Hope, the first one that I saw back in '77 when I was 3 years old. I was born in '74, but I remember going to the drive-in theater and watching Star Wars in the back of a station wagon, and was like, whoa! And I watched it a bunch. And then in 1980, Empire Strikes Back came out, and I watched it a bunch. And then in 1983, The Return of the Jedi came out, and I watched it a bunch. Now listen, a lot of people liked Return of the Jedi the most because the Ewoks were cute. I liked Return of the Jedi the least because I thought the Ewoks were stupid. I get the whole thing they were trying to portray, this simplistic, group of primitive looking people somehow banded together and helped save the Jedis and it all had to happen together as one big conglomeration of the Force. Ooh, I gotta reset my camera. Hang on. Boop. There we go. They had to all work together to overcome odds and, make the good guys win. Okay, it took everybody's effort, even these simple creatures that had, stone tools and whatnot. But I didn't care for it. What I did like was Empire Strikes Back. To me, that's one of my favorite movies. And it dawned on me just the other night why I like Empire the most. And I told my wife, I said, I think I just figured it out. She was like, what? I said, I like Empire the most because it's ultimately a love story. She was like, what? I said, think about it. In the beginning, you got Han flirting with Leia. They're in that, that ice bunker or whatever. And there's kind of a love story between Han and Luke. I mean, they're good friends, and Luke almost dies, and Han almost dies trying to find him and save him. And when they're in the ice thing in the very beginning, basically Han's telling Leia, like, hey, I like you, and you obviously like me, And she was like, you're crazy. She was deflecting the whole time. She even goes as far as to kiss her brother. She doesn't know he's her brother, but she kisses Luke to try and deflect Han from advancing any further or thinking anything was there that wasn't there. Anyway, it's kind of weird that she kissed her brother. But again, she didn't know. She just thought, wow, we have so much chemistry, so much in common. No, I'm just kidding. But Han pursues her. And at various times in the movie, he finds little moments to catch her gaze or to look out for her in special ways. And she also looks at him indifferently. Like, her attitude changes from the beginning of the movie towards the end, up to the point that Han is frozen in carbonite and she tells him, I love you. And he looks at her in a very knowing way and he says, I know. He'd already told her how he felt. But this was a moment. He was going to be maybe killed. They didn't know if he was going to survive. And they froze him in carbonite. Now he did live, obviously, because they have him in the next movie. But this is going on during this movie. That's got big conflict. It's got big loss on the side of the rebellion. You meet a lot of characters that you don't know before. You meet Lando Calrissian, who's the coolest black guy in the whole series, because he's probably one of the only ones that you meet. But Billy D. Williams is Lando Calrissian. How cool is he? You get to see R2-D2 do a whole lot of things that he didn't do in the first movie. He had the ability to swim underwater when they were on the planet of the Dagobah system with Yoda, whatever that swampy planet was. You meet Yoda. You get to see Yoda use the Force, lifting the X-Wing fighter out of the swamp. You get to meet the Emperor, the bad guy that ties all of this together, the bad guy that they used with Senator Palpatine when they went back and made those first three pieces of crap movies to try and bridge the gap. The one thing that I didn't like, though, is when they went and made those movies, they didn't listen or pay attention to the dialogue in the first movies. Because there's conversation that happens in the movies. There's conversation about Ben Kenobi, like finding Luke, or saying at a certain point there is another, and he's like, he looks like he's lost, like he doesn't have the information. And when they made the movies, it shows him clearly handling both children and handing them off to different people. He made the decision to be on the planet to look out for Luke on Tatooine, even though he seems like he doesn't know who he is. He's playing dumb or something. I don't know what he's doing. And Yoda should know Skywalker, but Yoda plays dumb. And I'm like, what the heck? Yoda acts like he doesn't even know who R2-D2 is. They all know who R2-D2 is if you watch the first 3 movies. There's just a weird disconnect of dialogue that nobody thought about in the storyline and nobody pointed it out. Either that, or I bet I know what happened. I bet the corporate executives got involved and they were like, listen, we want it to happen like this. Well, we're giving you a lot of money. Just make it this way. Maybe that's what happened. I don't know. To me, they screwed it up. I hate those first 3 movies. Don't care for them at all. Hate's a strong word. I don't care for them. Don't care for them. I do like Ewan McGregor playing a young Obi-Wan. I like that a lot. Other than that, not a big fan. Mace Windu's cool. Of course, anytime you can get Samuel L. Jackson to play a Jedi, that's pretty awesome. But like the storylines are confusing. The whole thing with Count Dooku or whatever his name is, that's confusing. You don't know who's fighting for who. It's all confusing. But you get to see Palpatine become the Emperor. And then when you're introduced to the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back, you're like, oh yeah, that's the bad guy. Heck yeah, that's the bad guy. Wow. And then the guy that you thought was the bad guy, Darth Vader, you start to see a little bit of something there. Like he's, in Return of the Jedi, you get to see him come around and sort of be a good guy again. Like there's elements of him realizing, oh, this is my son. But like, Leia makes a comment in Return of the Jedi. Luke, when he tells her, I think you felt it too. You're my sister. And she was like, I think I always knew. And he's like, what do you remember of our mother? And she was like, I remember she was kind. And I was like, wait. When they did that movie, she died in childbirth. And that's how Vader completed the transformation from being Anakin to being Vader. Like, that was the final straw. Because he thought she was dead. He thought the kids were dead. The kid was dead. He didn't know there was 2 kids. That's the whole thing. There's a lot of this that just doesn't add up. Anyway, I'm being hypercritical. I'm a fan. I just realized I'm wearing the stupid Millennium Falcon t-shirt while I'm telling you all this. If you haven't seen Solo, the Han Solo movie, watch the Han Solo movie. Okay? You get to see why the Millennium Falcon is cool. You get to see why it's special. You get to see the relationship between Han and Lando Calrissian, the young guy who played Han Solo. Doesn't look like a young Harrison Ford, but he kind of does. I know a lot of people were really critical because they wanted to see, I guess, a 70-plus-year-old Harrison Ford suddenly become a younger version of himself, but that's not going to happen, people. You just have to go with the disbelief and go, okay, this is young Han Solo, and then watch it. But I think they did a great job with the Han Solo movie. To me, that's one of my favorite movies. It's not the favorite, but it's one of my favorites. Empire is still my favorite. If I had to rank it, I'd put Empire, Solo, and then the last one that just came out with where Rey, is that her name? Rey? Yeah. Where she fights with Kylo Ren to kill that Smaug character, whatever the hell his name is. Smaug. Isn't that the same name of that stupid dragon in the Hobbit movies? I don't know. I may be getting those confused. All right, that's it. I'm going to wrap this up. I've been talking for long enough. I wanted to do this for longer than 30 minutes. I figured if I reset my camera, I'm also recording this with a GoPro across the room because I wanted to see if the GoPro automatically keeps recording and maybe just splits the file into 2. This is a learning process, and I'm using everything I can to make this better. So I hope you guys appreciate it, and if you don't, poop on you, but keep listening anyway because I swear I'm going to get better. Yeah, that's it. Y'all stay warm outside. It is, stay warm inside. It's cold and rainy out there. I'm going to watch some college football and maybe sand these walls. possibly paint. Who knows? We'll see. Thanks for watching, listening. You guys take care, and cue the cow. Moo! Was that good? I hope that was good. Y'all take care. All right, let me save this file. File, save, share. Yeah. Did that work?